both teams have been more reliant on the home run ball. I think the team who could make more contact and could have better pitching, better starting pitching, and bullpen pitching, the best mix of those two, I think will ultimately come out as World Series champions. So hopefully it could be. Hopefully it could end up being the Dodgers. We'll have to wait and see. But like I mentioned,
this is kind of risky, but I'm gonna call it out. I don't think there's gonna be a game 7. I think it's gonna be up to game 6. Who the winner is, we will have to wait and see until next episode.
In game 6. Welcome back, Roadrunners. My name is Enrique Medina, joined again by John Rodriguez. In this week's episode of Rio Talk, we're going to be going over the amazing moment from this past Tuesday night. The Dodgers clinching the 2020 World Series, their first World Series championship in 32 years. The last time they were World Series champions was all the way back in 1988. So we'll recap the series as a whole, games 3 through 6 especially. Since the last episode, we talked about games 1 and 2. So we'll go over the rest of the series as a whole. Game 6, the moments that brought the Dodgers to their championship. And we'll pretty much go over what this title means for the team as a whole and for the city of Los Angeles, of course. But with that being said, let's go straight into it. John, game 6. It was amazing, obviously the game that clinched the Dodgers' first World Series title since 1988. And just as World Series as a whole, it could have ended in 5, ended up going 6 games. For you, what do you think is the defining moment of this series? What do you think is maybe a defining play? What are you going to remember the most about this World Series title?
Well, I don't think of this whole playoffs. First of all, congrats to the Dodgers and congrats to the Rays for making it this far. Dodgers, they definitely deserve it. Rays as much, they deserve it as well. They were a great team, solid team. There could only be one winner, but very happy for the Dodgers. But as I was saying earlier, I'm not just gonna look at the World Series. I'm gonna look at kind of the whole playoffs, if that makes sense. Because this whole playoffs, it was very memorable. Rosarena was, a beast. You had the Dodgers, their defense in the outfield. But the thing, as I mentioned, last week's episode, I called it that there was going to be a game 6, that it was going to end at game 6. Reason I said that is because both of these two teams just came out of the championship series playing game 7. And I could tell you that, both of these teams didn't want to go, going back to that win or go home situation. They didn't want to push it at game 7. Whoever was gonna be the first 2-3 wins I felt like was gonna take it right away. But that's for me. As of the World Series, everything was amazing. One thing, Rosarena, even though the Dodgers won, I think he was a monster in this World Series. He broke many records, home run records in this postseason in general. But it's unfortunate that he didn't get to hold the trophy. He really would have won the MVP if the Rays would have won the World Series. But this kid, this guy has a big future ahead of him. Best of luck to him. As for the Dodgers, honestly, the pitching, Corey Seager, Mookie Betts, and Max Muncy really stood out to me as well. Max Muncy didn't really, I kind of felt like Max Muncy didn't get the attention that, that he really should have had. Corey Seager, he had a great, well-deserved MVP. But Max Muncy, one thing I always noticed is that he worked the count. Every at-bat he had, he would always work the count. And he had a good eye. He would not swing at pitches. Well, he would swing at pitches that were outside the strike zone, but it was very rare. You would always see he attacked the strike zone hard. He would get those hits, and he had like, I think he was in second place with the most RBIs in this postseason for the Dodgers. As for pitching, it was Kershaw that, he did a great job. I don't think people had to say that, like, that he choked in the postseason because
Yeah. Hold on. Let's talk about that because, of course, obviously Kershaw, all these years of he is the longest tenured Dodger. He's been there since he made his debut in 2008.
Mhm.
That's already 12 years ago. That is a while. This is the only franchise he's ever known, and this is the team that drafted him back in 2006. He's been here through everything. He was here through the 2008 and 2009 losses to the Philadelphia Phillies. He was there for all 8 NL West Division championships. The first 7 years, of course, ending in playoff disappointment. And like what you were about to mention, the part of people kind of writing that narrative that he doesn't come through in the clutch in the playoffs, and we've seen that in different instances where he's failed in the biggest games. Obviously, we had the division series and the championship series both in 13 and 14 against the Cardinals. We had 2016 game 6 of the championship series against the Cubs, 2017 World Series against Astros game 5. Obviously, we know what happened afterwards now, so there's an asterisk that could come with that game. There's also 2018 against the Red Sox, and obviously the most recent one, 2019 division series against the Washington Nationals. But this was the opportunity for him to rewrite his script, to rewrite himself as that guy that could come through in the postseason, that could come through in the clutch. And he totally did that. He came through when it mattered in the World Series. 2 games started, 2 games won. And an interesting stat that I remember hearing in the series as well is that in this World Series, it was actually the first time in Clayton Kershaw's postseason career that he had won 2 games in the same series. And it ultimately came when it mattered most in the World Series against the Tampa Bay Rays. He pitched absolutely fantastic in game 1. He pitched absolutely, well, not as fantastic as he did in game 1, but he pitched absolutely like the veteran 32-year-old that he is in game 5 of the World Series. And in a very important situation too, because the series was tied 2-2, especially after that crushing game 4 defeat with Chris Taylor and Will Smith's error on that last play that allowed Randy Arozarena, as you mentioned earlier, to score, even when he tripped and fell. I know a lot of Dodger fans everywhere. At that moment in time, it felt like Heartbreak City. It was, it stung. It just felt weird. It felt like those kind of postseason demons were coming back for a second. Me personally, as a Dodgers fan, I know you too. It was heartbreaking, game 4, the way it ended. But the thing about this Dodgers team, obviously, as they showed with being world champions, they were just different, man. They're just different from the start. The offense was they were always on top of it. Game 5, they did enough to get to Tyler Glasnow as they did in game 1. And in game 6, we'll talk about it later, the costly decision about Kevin Cash deciding to remove Blake Snell in the 6th inning, the bottom of the 6th. That's a move that many people will question for a long, long time in Tampa Bay, for sure. But at least this team as a whole, they showed their true resiliency throughout the playoffs, and it ultimately came clutch when it mattered. And finally we could say this is the team that broke that 32-year curse and call themselves world champions.
Yeah,
And
most
it's
definitely, man.
truly amazing to be able to finally hear that again. It's really, really, really amazing. And
Again,
how we were
this is
talking
my
about with
first time hearing
Kershaw, it almost doesn't even sound real.
Yeah,
It
it's
almost
very
doesn't.
surreal.
Yeah, so let me know just what you feel about the whole championship. Of course, let me know about what you think about Kershaw and what was running through your mind.
Well, as you mentioned earlier, like, this is the first time in his postseason career. And you got to remember that he's been, like, in total at least probably 12. playoff appearances because I remember 08, 09, and I was 8 years old. I was actually there when I saw Kershaw's debut. He was wearing the number 54. It was like during the summer. It was a little bit cloudy. I remember
Yeah,
that, and like looking all these years later, like obviously seeing his accomplishments, the Cy Youngs, the MVP, the no hitter. He had everything a pitcher would want. He was just missing this one thing, this one little thing. He had three opportunities. Out of those opportunities, he finally got one, and it's very well deserved. Everybody was happy for him because really, he was one pitcher that really needed it. He was kind of like the John Elway of Major League Baseball. John Elway was like a great.
100%. Yeah,
Uh, yeah, I think he only got one Super Bowl.
you got it
Uh,
at the end of his career.
yeah, at the end of his career,
He went
it's
back to
kind
back.
of yeah, but it's kind of like the little Kershaw story, and people are saying like Kershaw, is he done? Like is he coming to the end of his prime? Well, obviously he's not going to be the 2014 MVP, the vintage Kersh that everybody knew and loved. Obviously he's not going to have that same availability that he had then. But you know what? This postseason was like a redemption. He proved that he's not done. And to be honest, I don't even think he wants to be done. I think he wants to keep on going, because as Mookie Betts put it on social media, and LeBron James, is that not a lot of people are going to be satisfied. And I could tell you, once you win one, I'm pretty sure they're not satisfied as well, because they know that obviously they've been to the World Series before, but now that they won one, that makes them want to get another one that they wanted. Like you know,
They
like
know
they got yeah
wanted.
they try like a little piece of steak, and then obviously it's probably like the best steak they had, but they want to get it again because they know it's so rare and they know it's hard. And people are saying that even though it was not a full season, maybe it was a little bit easier. Well, in my opinion, I don't think it was easier because it's a 60 game season.
On that
It's a
on
shorter
that
season.
point, let's talk about that point because a lot of people are kind of noting that too, that it was a shorter season. Some are saying that it potentially could have been easier. But at the end of the day, each team had the same opportunity. 60-game season. Obviously, there was more teams who were able to enter into the playoffs this year, but each team had the same opportunity. There's no excuses that needed to be made. And ultimately, in this, the Dodgers were the best team in baseball. And that's what they proved. Best record in the National League, best record in all of Major League Baseball, and ultimately came out as World Series champions.
Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And another thing about this postseason too is that we didn't, like, the best teams in baseball. They didn't have a bye week, so they gave more opportunity to more teams, as you mentioned, like in the
Interrupted.
playoff bracket. Yeah. So in my opinion, I don't think like it was an equal opportunity. I felt like teams should have taken advantage, and some teams did. Like at the Padres, they took advantage. They knew that they needed to be in this postseason, that they want to prove themselves. Obviously, they were a good team. They weren't like they were able to pass the wild card, but they weren't able to pass the division series. But you know what? Hey, like that gives them like a little bit, like kind of like what the Dodgers had in 2013, 2014, when they were a young team.
Mhm.
It gave them a little boost. It gave them like a little experience, and that's something what teams need to help them, like become the teams that, like, to reach it all. But everybody did their part. Everybody did great. My top three players: Corey Seager was phenomenal. Um, Number two, I'm gonna go with Julio Urias. He pitched a dominant postseason. I honestly think that he could have won a co MVP in the World Series. You just look at his number. He got 4 wins, no losses. This guy pitched. I think he had like 29 strikeouts.
On that too, on that point too, Julio Urias became only the second pitcher in Major League Baseball history to record 4 wins in one postseason and to earn a save in that same postseason. The only other pitcher to do that, Madison Bumgarner, in that historic 2014 season in which he won the NLCS MVP, World Series MVP, and solidified himself as probably one of, or if not the greatest postseason pitcher of all time.
Oh yeah, I remember the Madison Bumgarner, like when he would, like, when they made it to the playoffs, especially 2014, 2012, and I was just like, 2014 kind of hurt because we won that division, and look who won at the end, like, the team from the wild card. But you know what?
And let's forget about that for now. Obviously,
I
it's
mean,
hard.
like, you can't really forget about that. You just gotta, like, pay your respects to Madison Bumgarner. He pitched a heck of a postseason. Honestly, he might be like, the greatest postseason pitcher that we've probably seen, like, to date. That's a reason why he's won these MVP awards in both the NLCS and in the World Series. You can't you cannot deny, like, the greatness that one can perform. So, tip my cap to
That was yes in this whole entire postseason, like you mentioned.
yeah, like Urias, like, that I think he didn't get enough credit as he should have. He had the most wins, no losses, like 29 strikeouts out of like 23 innings pitched. That's like basically at least one strikeout per inning. Uh,
So you had Corey Seager, Julio Urias as your
mhm.
guys. Who would be
Top
your
two
other
for
guy?
sure. Max Muncy, I don't think he got enough credit. Kershaw for sure, as like we talked about, like two wins. Like this was the first time that like, hey, he's been to this like stage before. He didn't want to get another loss, and sure enough, he finally got his ring. It was well deserved, and he wanted to prove to people like, hey, this is the reason why I deserve a ring. I don't want to come in here and be like, oh, these other guys are gonna win it for me. Nah, he wanted to prove that, like, it was going to be deserved. It was going to be well deserved.
Of course.
Number five, Mookie Betts, man. I mean, people may say, like, his bat wasn't on point in the World Series, but hey, look at the defensive side. Look how many home runs he robbed. Look how many base hits he robbed. If it wasn't for him in the outfield, and Corey Bellinger as well, but Mookie Betts, I think, had like a couple more plays, more outfield catches that, like, that really would have been a game changer if they would have dropped or if they would have
Yeah.
gone out of the fence, really. But Mookie Betts, hey, we got him from Boston for a reason. He came and performed, both defensively and offensively, especially Game Six, and especially in the NLCS as well. So Mookie Betts.
Let's talk about Game 6 because obviously that's the game so many of us are going to remember for the rest of our lives. Game
Oh yeah, most
6,
definitely.
October 27th, 2020, the day the Los Angeles Dodgers broke their 32-year curse and won the World Series. So let's get into a little bit of what happened in Game 6. Of course, we had Blake Snell on the mound facing off against Tony Gonsolin of the Dodgers. Blake Snell in Game 2 absolutely dominated through 5 2/3, left with a 5-2 lead. It was actually 4 2/3, my bad. But this Game 6, after that Rosarena home run in the first inning off of Gonsolin, the the bullpen was able to keep it together. The Dodgers bullpen was able to keep it together. You had Dylan Floro, Alex Wood, you had Bruce Dark Gratterall, Victor Gonzalez, of course. And on the Rays side of things, Blake Snell was dominating. And obviously what occurred in the 6th inning after getting one out to start off the inning, Austin Barnes got a base hit. And with the third time through the order, with Mookie Betts coming up, Rays manager Kevin Cash decides to take out Blake Snell, who was on a roll. He was in a complete roll. He had 9 strikeouts up to that point. And he decides to take him out with Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Justin Turner coming up. And one thing, too, to mention on that, the top 4 guys I want to say in the lineup, they're all 0 for whatever it was in that game up to that point. And really, it was the bottom half of the lineup that was doing at least limited damage, whatever it was up to that point, even though no damage was done at all against Snell. He was pitching a shutout, 1-0. He was keeping his team's season alive, and Kevin Cash decides to take him out, even though he's dealing. I understand from my point of view that it is the third time around the lineup, and a lot of people kind of look at baseball analytics now, sabermetrics and they look at the stats to kind of decipher and make those decisions, even though many times it can be a tough decision. But ultimately, I know it was talked about a lot around the baseball world. I know Alex Rodriguez and David Ortiz talked about this after the game. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, when it comes to the postseason and the playoffs, when you see a guy like that dealing, I think you really have to keep him in. I understand sabermetrics and statistics can work throughout the regular season, but sometimes they just can't take away gut instinct. And obviously, in that situation, Rays manager Kevin Cash went with the numbers, did not go with his gut instinct, and it cost him because obviously Blake Snell gave way to Nick Anderson. We know what happened next. Mookie Betts hit a double off of Anderson, advanced runners to third and second. We know what comes next. Wild pitch. And then Corey Seager hits a ground ball to G-Man, showing the first baseman, Mookie Betts, with his insane speed. Insane speed and intelligent, high baseball IQ, running the bases. Steals the go-ahead run. 2-1 Dodgers. Dodgers never looked back. Bottom of bottom of the eighth as well. Just to put the cherry on top, Mookie Betts, the Dodgers superstar offseason acquisition, pretty much puts the finishing touches on the Dodgers' first title in 32 years, hitting a solo home run, 3-1. That's all the Dodgers needed. So what were your thoughts on Kevin Cash's decision? And what do you think of really about that decision as a whole and what it might mean for the Tampa Bay Rays franchise?
Well, like I'm gonna say what I told before the game to everybody I was watching with, because Blake Snell, not only was it just this game, but this postseason in general, he's pitched a heck of a postseason. You could tell that he wanted it. But I told everybody before the game, if the Dodgers are gonna win this game, they need to get him out of the game, do whatever it takes to get him out of the game, because once they take him out, Kevin Cash messed up. If he even planned on taking him out, which obviously is a postseason. It's not like back in the day where you could look at stats and starting pitchers will start from beginning to end, because they will allow pitchers to do that back then. Obviously it's all about numbers and statistics, but back then managers have faith, which I really wish that some of these managers, did have, or it could even be, the people upstairs that are the GMs, calling them, you know what, according to this statistics, this statistics, that. What's really interesting about this move is that I honestly got to see after the World Series, I was watching a lot of MLB Network, and they were breaking it down, all these statistics, and it really didn't make sense for this move. What I mean is that if you look at Mookie Betts, especially Mookie Betts in general, which is the reason why he took him out, he said that he didn't want to face Mookie Betts, the third time. According to statistics, it shows that Mookie Betts, as when he faces a starting pitcher out of three, the numbers decrease. You will see him go from one, for his first at bat, he's about 900 average. In his second at bat, 200 average against starting pitchers. And third at bat, it's about 700 batting average.
This season as a whole, too, to kind of run off of that, the numbers also, it was mentioned throughout the broadcast, Mookie Betts, usually he does well against left-handed pitchers throughout his career, but this season he was more off than what he usually is against left-handed pitchers. And we know Blake Snell is a left-handed pitcher, and he was struggling all night against them, And, going back to what you were saying, the fact that Kevin Cash, I don't know if it's that he didn't have faith in him the third time around, or if he just trusted the numbers too much, but that ultimately came back to bite the Rays in. It was a championship decision that didn't work.
Something that will one what I also thought was really interesting is that I saw a lot of the post game interviews. Well, someone asked Mookie Betts, like, what did you think when Kevin Cash came out and took Blake Snell out? First thing he said was thank you. That tells you a lot right there when he says thank you, because they knew that Blake Snell was amazing. Blake Snell was truly amazing. I really think, they were comparing him to Sandy Koufax, who was also a dominant pitcher in the 60s
Mhm.
in the World Series. He had 9 strikeouts, only 75 pitches thrown. How, and it's only been 6 innings. Like, how can you take off, like, a player like that? This was kind of like the Super Bowl in '49 when Pete Carroll was like, what, I'm not going to give it to Marshawn Lynch. I'm going to throw it. And what happened? They got an interception. That was basically kind of what happened in baseball, basically. Hey, I'm going to take out my best pitcher. Why are you going to do that? You know, you Kevin Cash pretty much, like, used didn't use every pitcher that he had on the bullpen, but he had, like, pretty much gave him, like, a good amount of innings in the past 3 games. About, almost every
Did
pitcher, I want to say, like, showed up at least once, maybe even twice during this
Nick
World Series and 4 games.
Nick Anderson, the pitcher, the reliever he put in, he had a really fantastic regular season. He truly did. But in the postseason, he was struggling. He struggled against the Astros, and he struggled the whole series against the Dodgers as well. And uh, maybe Kevin Cash, obviously expecting him to do his job, expecting more of that regular season Nick Anderson that they had seen the whole year. It just didn't work. Obviously wild pitch, and then the ground out that Mookie Betts with great base running scored on to take the lead. And even then, one of his other most trustworthy relievers, Peter Fairbanks, he's the guy who ends up giving up that solo home run to Mookie Betts in the bottom of the eighth. So another story about this World Series in general, something that actually surprised me. It was ultimately their strong suit, the Rays' strong suit throughout the whole regular season and throughout the playoffs, the bullpen that actually was one of their weaker spots in my personal opinion throughout the World Series. It was actually their offense that kind of surprised me a little bit in a few of the games throughout the World Series and came through better than what I thought they would.
Well, yeah, most definitely. Like, this postseason was like, the Rays, their offense was just solid. This throughout this whole postseason. What really amazes me is that Arena, he was a St. Louis Cardinal and they let him go, which is something I'm pretty sure St. Louis regrets seeing this postseason. Like, it kind of almost seems as if, like, if you're a St. Louis Cardinals fan and you're watching the postseason and every time you see him at bat, you just want to turn off the TV because you could have
Yeah.
had what he's doing at your guys' team. Like, why would you, like, give it, like, give up a player like him? Like,
They also got rid of Luke Voigt, who's on the Yankees. He was the home run champion this year. He had the most home runs in the big leagues.
it's honestly, at the end of the day, it's up to the people up front and the people in the office. They, I'm not too, like, I can't say that they don't know what they're doing, because a lot of them do, and obviously they study this game, they study the players. This is this is their job. They do all these, um, transactions and all this stuff. They get all these players, they recruit them for a reason. This is their job. But however, I want to say that I think if, like, managers such as like Dave Roberts and Kevin Cash, who like play the sport, I really felt like some of these decisions were not theirs. If that
Mhm.
kind of makes sense, I really do not think Kevin Cash taking out what's his name, Blake Snell. I don't really think that was his decision, to be quite
I,
honest.
I mean, I think it was. Ultimately, I think when it came down to it, he was the one who decided it. I get what you're going at. Ultimately, at the end of the day, he's the one who makes the decision. He doesn't have to listen to the front office if he doesn't want to. It's ultimately his decision, and he decided to make that move in that specific time. So, at least in my opinion, I think that was all Kevin Cash. I don't think it had anything to do with the front office. I think the mentality that he has of the analytics and trusting the stats kind of comes about trusting the front office and what you get from the front office, all the information and everything. but the actual decision to take out Blake Snell, that was his decision.
Well, we'll never know. But like, what's happened when the damage is done. Here we are. But
Yeah.
obviously, like like I'll use Kershaw as an example. This is Kevin Cash. This is not the first time he's going to be in the playoffs. I guarantee you, with a team like this, I'm pretty sure they're going to be in the playoffs for years to come. This team is young. They got much to learn from. Like the Dodgers did, for years in the past. For as a matter of fact, about the past 5 years, all the teams that they lost against will end up being World Series champions, except for 2017. I don't want to mention it, but we know what happened in that one. But everything else, every team we lost against, every team the Dodgers lost against, it was always against a World Series champion. Because they proved
and if for some reason they didn't, they at least reached the World Series. I think the one exception was the second year they faced the Cardinals. That was the year the Giants made the World Series. But you're right. Every other year, they at least made the World Series, or if not won the World Series.
All right. Yeah. So, but, that's something that we'll never know. But tip my cap to the Rays. They had a great postseason in general.
Yeah. With that, let's just skip ahead into what this championship means for the Dodgers, what it means for specific people on the team, and what it means for the team as a whole, and what it means for the city. Obviously, first off, Kershaw, we already mentioned it, all the MVPs and all the accomplishments he had throughout his career. To finally get that first ring is absolutely fantastic. But it also means a lot for Victor Gonzalez and Julio Urias, the two Mexican left-handed pitchers on the Dodgers from Mexico, and they made Mexico proud for sure. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, most definitely, man. They made their mark. They proved to them, this is why we're here. This is why we, they played, this far. I saw in the Spanish interview that Julio Reyes was talking about, Gonzalez, and, apparently Gonzalez was thinking about quitting baseball. He wants to give up. And, Julio, how Julio's been with them since the start. And, this is a story that, it really surprises me because, Julio has been so much throughout his career. He came in 19. He's had multiple injuries, and that is something that has never stopped him. This may be a little off topic, but something that occurred before this season. Actually, he got a tattoo on his on I think it's his non-dominant arm, where whatever arm he has all these tattoos, but he has a tattoo, and each tattoo he has symbolizes something. He has a clock for the day that he made his debut. Every tattoo he has means something. So he got a tattoo of a tiger, and the reason he got the tattoo, he said that a tiger is it's like the king of the jungle, really. It's like it never, when it wants something, it goes for it. And Julio, every time, he wants to remind himself, he came this far. He needs to continue his dream, and that's something not to give up. So Julio's story really, impresses me. Him and Gonzalez, he said it in the interview, hey, he's my brother. Um, you know, he's my brother. We came this far. I convinced him to stay, and look, honestly, I think they were the two best pitchers out of the Dodgers bullpen. Urias, amazing. Um, Gonzalez, he had that 1, 2, 3 inning, all strikeouts. I mean, that's not easy to do in the big stage. It really is not easy to do in the big stage.
Yeah, they were amazing. And to kind of go on with that, we also have other veteran guys like Justin Turner. We'll get into the situation with him in just a little bit. We also have guys like Max Muncy, as you mentioned earlier, Kenley Jansen. We have guys like
Alex Wood.
We even have younger players like Brusar Gratterall. We have other veteran players such as Brusar. I just mentioned him. Alex Wood, as you mentioned.
Alex
PK
Wood.
Hernandez. Of course, Corey Seager. Cody Bellinger, AJ Pollock, Mookie Betts, of course, guys who have been there throughout these past few years, and some have been here longer than others, but as a whole, it just means so much to this squad as a whole because they've gone through so much heartbreak in the past, so many playoff defeats that stung not only for them but this city as a whole, and to finally get one in this way, it was absolutely amazing. And to credit that too with the Lakers just winning a championship in the NBA just a few weeks ago. This month, the same month, Los Angeles gets 2 championships, NBA and MLB. The first time since that 88 season that they both win the championship in their respective sports in the same year. So that's absolutely fantastic. Fantastic for the city of Los Angeles, and as many are saying right now, it's the city of champions.
It is certainly the city of champions, and Lakers. I'm not trying to be biased, but Dodgers and Lakers, they're both my favorite teams. Dodgers and baseball, Lakers on basketball. I knew in the past they have won in the same year. I am grateful that I got to experience this.
Dude, of
Yeah,
course,
this is something I would
never
like.
forget.
Yeah, this is something I'm never gonna forget. But before you mentioned that, you're talking about all these players, and you mentioned about what this means to the Dodgers, and honestly, there's never gonna be a 2020 Dodgers because you have players that have years to come, and you also have players that have been in this team in this organization for years, and that
Yeah,
have came a long way. But if you look, the season's over. So Justin Turner, Jock Peterson, Kike Hernandez, Pedro Baez, and other Dodgers, they're going to be free agents. But we're
they
never going to see
we
this
could
team
all
again.
say they were part of the team that finally won it all.
Yeah, they were finally part of the team that won it all. All every player deserved, and especially in the past 17, 18. Even though it was a defeat, they all deserve to win. Every team that makes it to the big stage deserves to win. There can only be one winner. Sometimes sometimes it'll go the way we want to. Sometimes things don't go as planned. But obviously,
Uh,
this went as planned. This job went as planned. But yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about Justin Turner because as many people have heard about his situation after the game, well, during the game, it was actually found out by MLB that Justin Turner actually tested positive for coronavirus, for COVID-19. And at first, it was a positive. They had that thought that potentially it could be a false positive, but after new tests came out, he was positive again. So he pretty much had COVID-19 and was playing throughout the game. But it wasn't until the seventh inning that he got taken out. And ultimately, what happened after the game, after they clinched the World Series, he came out and celebrated on the field. But his teammates, at least most of his teammates were, I mean, the team in general, they were okay with it. They wanted him to be out there for the picture. And of course, for him, he's from Southern California. He's from Long Beach. He grew up a Dodgers fan. So this is literally his dream come true. So, um, I mean, I know a lot of people have their opinions on it. Some people don't like it, obviously, because he puts people at risk. In my personal opinion, I would have never let that opportunity slip to be able to celebrate it. I would have found any way possible to celebrate it. Probably could have been done in a much better fashion than what happened. But for Turner to be able to celebrate with his team ultimately, something he's been dreaming about his whole life, I was so happy for him, even though the unfortunate news that came out afterwards.
yeah, most definitely, man. I remember right when the game finished, it went straight to you saw the team celebrating, and it just cut straight to Fox Sports, and they said breaking news. And right when they said breaking news, I was just like, I don't know, something told me right away it was about Turner because you didn't see him go out the field. And then right when they said oh, Turner tested positive for COVID-19, when I found out, and I'm pretty sure everybody others knew, is well, there's a 90% chance that the team is affected by it because if he got tested positive, there's obviously a big chance that he was positive before he took the test. And the fact that he was in that dugout already, the fact that he was probably with the families and the team, like, the teammates that he's with, and like, in the pregame, and like, the fact that they're all in the bubble, they're staying at the same hotel. They're staying like, they're staying like, they're in a bubble for a reason. Um, what's very interesting about this is that Major League Baseball wants to put a federal investigation on this, like, on Turner.
Yes.
What they really should do, honestly, um, is put a federal investigation on how he got it in the first place. Like, how are you going to go straight at him? Because, like you said, this is something that he's always wanted. This is something that, it's not easy to come to a World Series this far. They've
On that point you bring up too, my bad I interrupt you, but
No, no, you're good.
yeah, like had you mentioned about MLB, ultimately the fact that MLB didn't find out until during the game that he had COVID-19, that they were absolutely sure that he had it, and the fact that he stayed in for that long, it kind of says something about Major League Baseball and their protocols as well, because that should be something that should be situated since the beginning of the game, you know? That's something on MLB's part that they need to own up to as well, because obviously, it's in a sense it's bad what Justin Turner did, obviously, putting people at risk, but also MLB's fault for not being able to prevent that in the beginning before the game. So there's that aspect of it too. So you can't just put the full blame on Justin Turner. I know a lot of people really bashed out on him and said some pretty harsh things about him, but we also have to take into consideration that MLB really didn't take full responsibility on it and truly have done their job, and it just says a little bit about how they handled the situation.
Well, yeah, most like, from the past, like, we could tell, like, um, I kind of felt that Major League Baseball don't really take like a lot of priorities, like, um, professional. You know, I'm like, even though, like, it just so happens to be all around the Dodgers. JT with this Dodgers, obviously, but you think back in the beginning of the season, you know, you think about the trash cans with the Astros, those. I mean, you would think that they would get some type of suspension, but they
It
really
says
just
a lot
got a
about the
slap.
league.
Yeah, they just got like a slap on the wrist. So,
Yeah,
I mean, if cheating in the World Series is really a slap on the wrist, so, but obviously, I understand, I get it. It's like, you can't really compare, cheating to like putting people's lives in risk. But the fact that he played 8 innings, 7 innings, but 7 innings, and he was in the stadium where it's a bubble. With not only was he with the Dodgers, but he's in third base. He's pretty close to the Rays side of the dugout. I mean, I'm pretty sure he like the Rays their baseman. I mean, hopefully he got checked because he's the one closest to Turner throughout the whole game. But at that point, everybody is exposed.
mhm.
They're all playing with the ball that they throw to each other. Once you touch that ball, it's like it's gonna be exposed. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
So at that point, it's like you can't really get mad at Justin Turner about that. Major League Baseball should, like, also say, like, hey, it was kind of our fault as well.
Yeah,
You can't just point it at one finger. Yeah, I understand. I could get that it was pretty selfish that Justin Turner went into the field, but hey, the Dodgers said it was okay. Like, hey,
you did.
if you think about it, like, that was the last game. I mean, what we're gonna do? Like,
That's something he's been dreaming about his whole life.
exactly, exactly. Like, there's no more games anymore. There's no more, like, everything's over. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody thought the same thing, that, like, well, if we were around Justin Turner, there's a good chance that he had it before.
And
You would.
again, on that might be, you never know. It could be the only opportunity is in his entire career that he may have to celebrate a World Series title
Oh
and
yeah, I
to
was thinking
celebrate.
that for sure the same thing, because as soon as they won the World Series, all the names I mentioned that would be free agents, I thought about them right away. Like, this may be their only opportunity, to win, especially with this team that they played for many years. So,
Yeah,
this is something that Turner, like, hey, Turner's been there, like, he's a fan favorite. He holds records for the Dodgers franchise and postseason history, average, RBIs, home runs. Like you have to at least celebrate with them.
Of
And
course.
sure, it may be selfish, but you know what? I really
I mean,
felt if anyone was,
yeah,
if
as
anybody
a
else was
whole,
in his position, they would have done it as well.
the whole situation was unfortunate. The way people bashed out on him, how it was handled, it was all just an unfortunate situation from one of the happiest moments of his life, one of the happiest moments in franchise history. But ultimately, let's move on from that. And I want to ask you, what is the most defining moment, or what is going to be the moment that you may remember the most about this team, or how will you remember this team the most?
I'll be honest with you, probably the last out, Julio Reyes and three strikes. That's the most memorable to me, because that's even then when he threw out the last pitch, I still can't believe it. What I just witnessed, I
I'm right
honestly
there with
couldn't.
you. I absolutely jumped up and down. I mean, I showed you the video.
Yeah,
Me celebrating. I was so excited. But for me, obviously that's a part of it. But I think the thing I'm going to remember the most about this team is the resilience. They came back, especially from that
three to
three
one
one
deficit.
that 3-1 deficit against the Atlanta Braves. One thing I want to mention even before that, that this was a year that they had really good competition in the NL West with the San Diego Padres. It started from the start in the regular season. The Padres were knocking on the door, trying to overtake them, but they still showed why they're the kings of the West. They're able to
Let's not
take
forget
care of the
Colorado
Milwaukee Brewers
Rockies
in
as
two.
well. The Rockies were in that mix as well. All three teams. While
They
Dodgers were obviously a little bit better, but really
in the
it was pretty much the Rockies and Padres fighting for second.
yeah,
So yeah,
and to go more into detail as well, they were able to beat them, of course, in the division series. It showed a lot of their grit, especially with Game Two, the very interesting game that happened there with the whole Manny Machado incident and Bellinger robbing teeth and all that. They're able to get
yeah.
through the Padres through their new rival, obviously, and then of course 3-1 deficit. I think one hit that might not be overlooked, but might not be remembered as much because it wasn't in the World Series. But Will Smith's home run in Game 5 of the championship series off of Will Smith, the reliever from the Braves. We were down 2-1 in that game. It was the top of the sixth inning. We still had a chance to lose that game and be eliminated from the playoffs. That home run really changed the script of that entire series. And I think that's one kid that we have to look back on and appreciate so much because probably
That was a make it
that
or
was
break it.
that was an absolute game changer. And obviously, too, Mookie Betts' plays throughout the National League Championship Series. Corey Seager absolutely on fire. I have never seen Corey Seager as on fire as he was during this postseason. And even Game 7, Cody Bellinger's go-ahead home run in the 7th off of Chris Martin. That's a moment I'll never forget. Kike
Yeah,
Hernandez game-tying home run in Game 7 as well. These are all moments that I'm going to remember forever. And, the thing that makes it even more special, too, is that everybody had their moment. Everybody put in something to really help this team win their first championship since 1988. Everybody had their moments. And it's truly special to say that this was the group, this was the bunch that was finally able to win it all.
most definitely, man. This was a team that everybody did at least something into it. Even when, like, you know what? Even the bench got something out of it. You look at Rios, you look at Smith, you look at Hernandez. When they put them into pinch hit, oh man, they would hit the ball and boom. I'll be honest with you. I honestly thought I was gonna see a lot of Rios in this postseason, which I was like, it was unfortunate that we didn't get to see a lot of Rios, but
Yeah.
I really thought it went. I really thought everyone Rios should have played more games. At least
He came through in a few big situations, though.
he
Game
did.
3, the NLCS, that 11 run first.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just the whole process, the whole journey, everything. That's what I'm going to appreciate the most, just the way it happened. And of course, the moment when it happened, because that's something you'll never, ever forget. That's something you'll remember forever. October 27, 2020. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you with when the Los Angeles Dodgers won the 2020 World Series? And, it's just absolutely amazing. I'm just so happy for this city, so happy for the fans who have waited forever. Fans like me, I got to share this moment with my father, who was a person who introduced me to this game, to this team. I love Dodgers baseball and baseball as a whole because of him.
Yeah, like I mean, we all gotta learn the sport from somewhere, and we gotta learn like this team from somewhere. And I got to share this moment with my cousins, who I really grew up as brothers. Like we honestly call each other brothers at this point, especially like all throughout high school. My Theo, and honestly, it was probably my oldest cousin. Uh, he got me into the sport. He got me into like Dodgers a lot. Not just him though, but like all my whole family.
Yeah,
As soon as the Dodgers won it all, it was kind of like Happy New Year's to us. Honestly, everybody hugged each other. Everybody like were like saying cheers, salute. Like this is a big accomplishment, something we'll never forget.
sorry about that, guys. We had a little bit of a connection problem right there. But I mean, back to it, John. You were talking about just how it meant, like what the championship meant to you, the people you grew up with, your cousins, and I'll go on a little bit about that a little bit more.
I don't know, like that's pretty much it. Honestly, is that like you learn about the sport from someone, and then you also like learn about this team and like the reason why you root this team. And honestly, sports, it's not just baseball, but it's almost every sport in general. It gives you something to be happy about. It gives you something to care about. You can root for your local team, or you can root for any team basic, like any team that's your favorite, or even a specific player. But obviously, LA County, it's pretty much Dodger Nation. You know that. But it was just a really beautiful moment, honestly, especially like hugging every family member, congratulating everybody, even though like we were just like watching it from our couches. But hey, we supported them all this way. This is
I
something that every fan is gonna remember for the like the rest of their life.
October 27th, 2020, day the Dodgers won the World Series.
Yes,
And
sir.
with that said, man, I'll tell you for sure.
All
Dodgers,
right.
we commend you. We give you thanks for an absolutely unforgettable season. Thank you for all the memories that we'll remember and memories that will last a lifetime. So many of us to be able to share these moments with the people we love. Absolutely fantastic. My hat looks a little okay. That's a little better right there.
I think my
Looked
hat's
a
a little
little,
small, to be honest.
yeah, just probably the angle, but I mean, absolutely fantastic season. Finally, be named world champion. Absolutely fantastic. And before we head out from this episode, just want to remind again for all you Roadrunners watching this Real Talk that with the November 3rd election coming up, just make sure all of you are doing your research, and of course, make sure you guys are voting. At this point now, at this stage, you cannot mail in your votes because it probably will not reach in time for those votes to be counted. So what you guys will need to do is drop them off in certain locations, the closest locations around you, and go to those drop-off stations and do what you need to do to make sure your vote is counted for. With that said, make sure you do what you need to do for this upcoming election. And of course, with this Dodgers season, absolutely fantastic. And I hope all of you enjoyed it as much as we did for sure. And with that said, that's going to conclude this episode of Rio Talk. Thank you again, John, for joining in. I'm Enrique Medina, signing off. Thank you, guys.